Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video we're going to be talking about some of the most expensive horror films ever made. So horror films that had the biggest budgets thrown at them. I'm going to go through some of them, just say a little bit about them, say what I think about them, and kind of decide ultimately if the big budgets behind them were really worth it. So we'll get straight into it. So the first one on the list with a budget of $87 million was Hannibal. So the follow-up to Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins of course reprising his role as Hannibal Lecter. And I do actually enjoy Hannibal. I thought it was a really good follow-up. It was a good film. I actually like it slightly more than Silence of the Lambs. I know most people probably won't agree with that, but something about Hannibal just really resonates with me, and I enjoy this one. Despite its large budget, it's not got kind of giant visual CGI effects or things flying around all over the place. It's much more of a performance-based film, which is one of the reasons why I like it. But it does have a very nice kind of classy, glossy look to it, which I appreciate. And quite a few big stars in this one. I'm sure Anthony Hopkins wasn't cheap to reprise his role as Hannibal Lecter. But this does have a number of things about it that I like, that I think would have been helped by a considerable budget. So I think overall I'm going to put this one in the it was worth it pile. Like I say, I think they got a good movie out of this one. It looks really good. I think it stands the test of time pretty well as well. So all that giant budget wasn't for nothing. So first movie on the list is Hannibal. Okay, next movie on the list with a budget of $95 million was Hollow Man. So Kevin Bacon is a scientist messing around with invisibility and things like that. Manages to turn himself invisible. It's a bit of like a more modern day Invisible Man at the time. But this one took a pretty sinister turn with him sort of going out and doing whatever he wanted really, and turning a bit dark and murderous. Again, this is one that I really enjoy. I really like this for the special effects at the time, which is probably where a lot of the budget went on. I thought that was really cool to see the way they kind of showed Kevin Bacon, even though he was invisible, and he had like the smoke around him and the water trailing down his face, and then of course the Invisible Man look with the bandages. That was pretty cool. I quite like the high-tech laboratory setting as well. I'm sure that cost quite a bit. And Hollow Man's always just been kind of a big budget Hollywood horror film that I've enjoyed. It's not amazing, but it is very entertaining, I think. So yeah, I do like this one. I'm going to put this in the worth it pile because it's one that I've always enjoyed, and I do think back fondly to this one and watching it for the first time. Okay, next up with a budget of $79 million is It, Chapter 2. So this movie was okay. It's got some pretty good moments in it. It's got some great visual effects in it. My problem with the It movies, the modern It movies, was I felt that they tried too hard to be funny and to be kind of a bit SNL, and they didn't capture the kind of the truly terrifying nature of the book. The book is a seriously scary story, and the It creature in the book is genuinely terrifying. And in the book, when one of the characters kills themselves rather than return back to the town, you kind of think, really? But when you read on and you see how scary things get, you really kind of understand that, which is great writing on Stephen King's part. But in this, I didn't think they captured that, and it didn't help with all the characters just making like cocky one-liners and telling jokes in between scary things happening. It really took away from what the essence of It was, in my opinion. So it's not a movie that I'm all that much of a fan of. I really like Pennywise in this. I think he's great. He's become pretty iconic, which is awesome. And it does have some good moments, but for me, especially It Chapter 2, it just tried way too hard to be funny. I think they could have done a much better job with a modern day version of it and $79 million behind it. So for me, that wasn't worth it. So that goes in the other pile. Right, next up, with a budget of $130 million is Prometheus. So Ridley Scott's kind of follow-up to Alien. I've talked about this movie before. I don't mind the film. I like it. I like it as more of a standalone film rather than a follow-on to Alien. For me, Alien was such a simple yet effective story, whereas this kind of just is light years ahead in terms of storytelling. And it was very impressive, but I found it quite jarring to go from Alien to Prometheus. This one was way too philosophical, way too existential, and just explored far too many themes and ideas for it to be a kind of a smooth transition from Alien. I don't like the comparison between the two. But as a film itself, I think it's a pretty good film. It takes us to some incredible looking worlds. The visual effects in this are really good. The action in it's fantastic. So as a standalone film, I don't have as much of a problem with Prometheus. So on the whole, I would say as a standalone film, I'm going to say it's worth it. I'm going to be kind to it and say that it was a pretty good job that they did with this one. In the Alien canon, I don't like it, but standalone, yes, it was worth it. Okay, next up on the list with a whopping budget of $160 million is Van Helsing. Hugh Jackman's portrayal of Van Helsing. I'll get straight to it. This is not a film that I'm a fan of at all. It does not. This is not what Van Helsing is to me. And I remember when this came out, it actually took me a long time. It took me several years to even watch this film because the trailers for the film turned me off so much. So it was a bad start from the beginning for me watching this film. But yes, visually it's very impressive. There's all kind of things going on. These massive action sequences. Some of the creatures look pretty cool. It's non-stop action and things flying around everywhere and all this high-tech weaponry that Van Helsing is brandishing. But like I say, it's just not my Van Helsing. Van Helsing to me is Peter Cushing or an actor of similar ilk with his coat, his hat, his bag and his steak, trudging through the Transylvanian countryside looking for Dracula. And that's all it needs to be for me. It doesn't need to be this high-tech CGI-laden affair. It's just not the film that I wanted to see, and it's not a representation of Van Helsing or any of that kind of storyline that I appreciate personally. So no, I'm not a fan of this one. This one was definitely not worth the $160 million budget that it had behind it, unfortunately. Okay, next up, another huge budget. At $150 million was The Wolfman, Universal's reimagining of the classic Wolfman story. I watched this when it first came out. I've never watched it again since. I remember thinking it was okay. It wasn't the travesty that I was expecting when I heard they were redoing The Wolfman. Yeah, it was alright. There were some big actors that lent the name to this, which I quite appreciated. I thought the effects were alright. But like I say, I've not revisited it since. I've never been kind of compelled to watch it again. So, whereas I didn't hate it, I just think it's average. It's kind of found its place in just sort of the average camp for me. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was worth $150 million. I'd like to see something a bit more special for that. So yeah, I'm going to put that one in that pile. And the last one on the list, the most expensive horror, I think the most expensive horror movie ever made, to my knowledge, at $190 million, is World War Z, which sees Brad Pitt taking on a zombie outbreak that's taking over the country, taking over the world, I believe. And so yeah, this one again, it's got very, very big visual effects. It looks great visually. It's very, very action packed. The action spans over different countries. I think I preferred the second half of the film more to the first half, where I think they go to the lab and things are going on there. The first half didn't really grab my attention all that much, despite it being huge, like I say, over the top action and things like that. But again, the trouble that I have with this is it's just not, it's not a zombie film to me. And I think back of some of the zombie greats and my favourite zombie films, so like the Romero movies, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. I mean, they were made for like a pittance, and they created some of the greatest zombie films ever made. I mean, like Zombie Flesh Eaters, they used clay for the zombie makeup because they didn't have any money, yet they made, in my opinion, the greatest zombie film ever made. So to me, $190 million on a zombie film doesn't quite compute, and is never going to capture the essence of what a zombie film is for me. That's just me. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but all this kind of high-tech, in-your-face CGI is not necessary when it comes to making zombie films. I'd much rather see the cheap, down and dirty Romero films or the Fulci films rather than this kind of glossy, sort of over-the-top CGI Hollywood stuff. That's just me personally. So for me, $190 million, no way. Definitely not worth it. So that goes there. So there we go, guys. I've got 3 films that I will say, yeah, that budget was used well. That was worth it. I got 4 that definitely wasn't. So they are some of the most expensive horror films ever made, guys. Let me know what you think of these. Do you think that's money well spent? Was it a waste of money? Do you agree or disagree with the things that I've said? Let me know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.